Michael Torres, a 45-year-old teacher, slipped into his lake after a long day. The water was his family's legacy, inherited from his grandmother. But Keys shattered when HOA President Carol Danvers appeared at the fence, clipboard in hand, her voice sharp. "That's a $1,000 violation," she barked. Neighbors paused their lawn work, heads turning. Michael froze, dripping with disbelief. She claimed the lake was community property and accused him of contaminating it. Phones came up, recording the absurd scene. Michael stepped closer, steady but angry. "This is my deeded lake, Carol. My family's since 1923. Her smile widened coldly, as if she had practiced this moment. The air thickened with murmurs, neighbors whispering about how far the HOA president was willing to go. What started as a swim had turned into a public showdown on his own shoreline. By evening, a formal notice was nailed to Michael's door. $1,000 fine plus $150 for every day of non-compliance. Word spread fast, and by nightfall, half the block was buzzing. To neighbors, the sight of a grown man fined for swimming in his own lake looked absurd. Michael sat at his kitchen table, paperwork spread wide, reading the HOA bylaws line by line. Buried deep in the fine print was Carol's twisted clause, declaring all water features shared community assets. His blood ran cold. Outside, a cluster of teens giggled as they replayed phone footage of the afternoon's fight. Michael shut his blinds, staring down at the violation notice. Carol's smug handwriting in blue ink mocked him with every glance. A war had just been declared, and the battleground was his own backyard.
Sleep wouldn't come. Michael dug deeper into HOA archives online. Hours of research uncovered a forgotten article from 3 years prior. 3 neighborhood dogs poisoned during an environmental project authorized by Carol. She had defended it in print, coldly blaming irresponsible pet owners. Michael's chest tightened. His own dog, Buddy, had died that same week. He had dismissed it as tragic coincidence, but now it felt like evidence. His hands shook as he printed the article, laying it beside the violation notice. The image of Buddy struggling for breath burned in his memory. Neighbors might laugh about swimming fines, but this went darker. Carol had a record of hiding cruelty behind policies. The idea that she had robbed him of his dog and was now after his lake filled Michael with a fury he hadn't felt in years. Near midnight, Michael stepped out onto his porch for air. That's when he spotted Carol at the edge of the cul-de-sac, phone pressed to her ear, voice low but carrying. "The teacher won't be a problem much longer," she said. "Handle it by Friday." She turned, startled when she saw him watching, then waved with a fake neighborly smile before slipping into her SUV. Michael's stomach twisted. Who was she talking to? What did "handle it" mean? Back inside, he couldn't shake the thought of menacing shadows in her words. The fine no longer felt like a petty abuse of power. It sounded like the opening move of a much larger scheme. He locked every door in the house and sat awake at the window until dawn, waiting for headlights that never came.
The next morning, Michael dialed an old family contact. Detective Paul Henderson, his late father's partner, had worn the badge for 30 years. Within hours, Paul sat at Michael's kitchen table, coffee steaming between stacks of papers. He read Carol's violation notice, then the dog poisoning article, and finally leaned back with a hard stare. "She's not just greedy, she's desperate, and desperate people are dangerous," Paul said. He explained how Carol had been issuing inflated citations for months, mostly targeting higher-valued homes. The pattern fit. She was running a cash grab before her debts swallowed her. Michael clenched his fists, fury cutting through his exhaustion. Paul tapped the table. "You need to be ready. She's going to push you harder, and when she does, you'll need evidence to fight back." The battle lines were officially drawn. The harassment spread quickly. Michael's neighbor, Tom Jenkins, a mechanic of 20 years, knocked on his door holding a violation slip. $1,100 for parking my truck in my driveway, Tom said, his voice tight with disbelief. Soon after, Maria Lopez got fined $800 for a holiday wreath. Frank Miller was slapped with $950 for planting tomatoes. Michael stood on his porch, watching fear ripple through his block. Carol walked the street daily, snapping photos, waving her clipboard like a badge of honor. Community standards protect everyone, she snapped at Michael when he confronted her at the curb. He stepped forward, anger rising. You're terrorizing families, not protecting them. Her smirk didn't fade. Instead, she scribbled another note and said coldly, "Every action has consequences, Mr. Torres. You'll learn that soon."
Michael found an unexpected ally, Emily Grant, the HOA treasurer. She called him to meet quietly at a coffee shop away from prying eyes. Nervously stirring her drink, Emily slid a folder across the table. "She's been siphoning money," she whispered. Inside were bank statements, fake vendor invoices, and forged signatures, all leading back to Carol. Michael flipped through page after page, his pulse quickening. $38,000, Emily said, her eyes brimming with fear. "She threatened me when I asked questions, said accidents happen to people who dig too deep." Michael's jaw clenched. Emily had risked everything to show him this. "My daughter deserves better than living in fear," she added. For the first time, Michael realized he wasn't just fighting for his own property. Carol was bleeding the entire neighborhood dry. That night, Michael and Detective Paul spread Emily's documents across the dining table. Paul nodded grimly. "This is enough to start a fraud case, but we need her to incriminate herself." Michael exhaled, exhausted yet resolute. Paul leaned forward. "Desperate people brag when they think they've won. Make her think you're broken. Offer a private deal." Michael's stomach turned at the idea of pretending to surrender, but he knew Paul was right. Just then, headlights swept across the front yard. Carol's SUV slowed in front of his home, camera flashing from the window as she snapped photos. Michael stormed onto the porch. "Leave my property alone," he shouted. Carol rolled down her window, her smile icy. "I'll leave when this neighborhood is clean." Then she sped off, tires hissing like venom. The next morning, Michael dialed Carol with his best defeated tone. "I can't keep fighting. Maybe we can settle privately." Her voice lit up, dripping with satisfaction. "Finally, some sense. Come to my house tomorrow evening. We'll make an arrangement." When he hung up, Paul set a recording device on the table. "This is it, kid. She'll incriminate herself." Michael barely slept that night. Carol's house loomed the next evening like a stage for betrayal. Fresh paint outside, foreclosure notice taped to the window. Inside, she had documents neatly arranged, her fake testing device displayed like evidence. She smiled thinly. "Half ownership of your lake is a fair compromise." Michael's stomach churned. He kept his voice low. "I keep thinking about Buddy. You were involved then, weren't you?" Her mask cracked. Carol's voice sharpened, slipping into cruelty. "That dog contaminated water with waste. I had to take extreme measures to protect standards." Michael's heart pounded. The wire caught every word. She leaned forward, eyes burning. "Your property affects everyone. I found creative ways to fund oversight. If that meant moving money around, so be it." Her manicured hand tapped the fake documents as if they were gospel. "Community survival requires sacrifices, Mr. Torres. Yours was overdue." Michael fought to keep his composure, though fury boiled beneath. Outside, a car door slammed. The signal. Detective Paul stepped through the back, badge flashing. "Carol Danvers, you're under arrest for fraud, embezzlement, and criminal harassment." Her face twisted in shock, her voice rising into a shriek. "This is entrapment! You'll regret this!" The handcuffs clicked shut. The arrest sent shockwaves through the neighborhood. That evening, 70 residents packed the community center, faces split between fury and relief. Helen Moore, a retired teacher in her 70s, slammed her cane against the floor. "Carol kept our property values high. This is a witch hunt." A chorus of voices shouted back, some in defense, others demanding her removal. Tom Jenkins stood up, fists clenched. "She bled us dry. I've got invoices to prove it." The room boiled over, neighbors screaming across the aisles. Michael sat in the front row, fists balled tight, feeling the weight of every angry eye. Paul leaned toward him and whispered, "This isn't just about law anymore. This is war for loyalty." The vote to suspend Carol would come down to a handful of wavering hands.
When Michael played the wire recording, the room went still. Carol's voice filled the speakers. That dog contaminated water. I had to take extreme measures. Gasps cut through the silence like blades. Emily stood, clutching the banker's box of evidence. She stole $38,000 from community funds. Here are the statements. She dropped papers onto the table, pages fanning out like confetti of betrayal. Helen shouted from the back, "Fabricated! He's twisting everything!" Michael shot back, rising to his feet. "Fabricated? You all heard her voice. She killed my dog, she robbed our children's playground, and she tried to steal my home." The room erupted into shouts, half for justice, half in denial. Paul scanned the crowd with sharp eyes, hand near his badge, ready if chaos turned violent.
The vote felt like eternity. Residents raised hands one by one, their decisions weighted with fear of lawsuits and loyalty. 41 for removal, 37 against, a margin of 4. The gavel banged, sealing Carol's fate, but the cheers were hollow. Nearly half the room still saw Michael as a villain. He stood frozen as whispers followed him out, vindictive. Maybe he framed her. Outside, Emily walked beside him, gripping the evidence box tighter. "They won't forgive easily," she murmured. Michael exhaled sharply, rage still buzzing under his skin. "They don't have to forgive me. They just need to know the truth." A flash from across the street caught his eye, a black sedan idling. Camera lens pointed straight at him. Paul's voice hardened. "They're not done with you, kid, not by a long shot." The retaliation came fast. Michael's car was keyed 3 times in a week, mailbox bashed apart, house egged nightly. One morning, red spray paint blared across his garage, community destroyer. Neighbors walked past in silence, some pretending not to see. Paul pulled up, jaw set. This is coordinated. She's got allies still working. That night, Michael woke to rattling at his back door. Shadows moved along the windows, testing locks. Heart pounding, he whispered into his phone, "Someone's trying to break in." Police arrived minutes later, but the intruders had vanished, leaving only wet footprints leading to the lake. The next day, Tom showed him grainy footage, a figure in scuba gear crawling out of the water at 3 a.m. Michael's blood ran cold. What the hell are they looking for?
The trial began under heavy tension. Carol sat with her new lawyer, polished and smug in a tailored navy suit, spinning her as a grieving widow, driven by desperation. The jury listened as he thundered, "She's a victim of circumstance, not a criminal." Michael clenched his fists at the defense's performance. But then, Emily stepped up, voice steady, eyes sharp. She embezzled $38,000. I have every document. She handed them to the judge, her hands trembling but resolute. The prosecution played Carol's taped confession, her voice cold and cruel. Carol snapped back on the stand. "It was metaphor. He tricked me." The jury flinched at her shrill denial. Michael sat in the gallery, jaw tight. Justice was gross, but the defense's manipulation was dangerous, and the mysterious black sedan still haunted him. 3 days of deliberation felt like torture. Michael paced courthouse halls until the jury finally returned. The foreman's voice echoed, "Guilty on all counts." Gasps broke through the courtroom. Carol exploded, screaming, "This is entrapment, conspiracies, you'll all regret this." Deputies wrestled her back into cuffs, her eyes wild, spitting venom toward Michael. He didn't flinch. Judge Harrington's gavel thundered. "Mrs. Davis, you defrauded your neighbors, committed animal cruelty, and abused your authority. 4 years and 8 months. Restitution of $45,000. Cheers and sobs rippled through the gallery. Emily squeezed Michael's hand, whispering, "Buddy finally got justice." But as Carol was dragged away, Michael caught sight of her lawyer whispering to a tall stranger in a gray suit. The man turned, snapping a photo of Michael with cold precision.
That night should have been victory. But Michael couldn't shake the gray-suited stranger's stare. Paul confirmed his instincts. Private operatives, serious money backing her. Days later, Michael noticed the same sedan outside the school, then again near his grocery store. His phone buzzed with anonymous texts.
You don't know what's buried under that lake. At 2:47 a.m., noises jolted him awake, someone testing every door, every window. Heart racing, he called Paul, who arrived minutes later. Muddy footprints trailed from the back porch straight into the lake and disappeared. The next day, Tom's security footage revealed the impossible, a figure in full scuba gear emerging from the water like a ghost. Michael stared at the screen, whispering, "They're not after me. They're after what's under my land." Weeks later, a collect call from state prison flashed on Michael's phone. Against every instinct, he answered. Carol's voice was weaker, cracked with defeat. "Michael, they'll never stop. They forced me. The lake. There's something under it." He gripped the receiver tight. "What are you talking about?" Her whisper dropped lower. "Men in suits came to me at the casino. They cleared my debts, said if I didn't get you to sell, my kids would have accidents. They told me what's buried there is worth millions. That's why they wanted your land." Michael's knuckles turned white. "You poisoned Buddy because they told you to?" Carol broke into sobs. "They threatened my daughter. You don't understand. You're still in danger." The line went dead, leaving Michael staring at his reflection, skin pale, heart pounding.
Paul wasted no time. He took Carol's warning straight to federal contacts. FBI agents confirmed what Michael feared. Geological surveys had been done years earlier. Rare earth minerals, worth tens of millions, were buried under his lake. A Nevada-based consortium had been buying properties across the region through intimidation, using desperate local officials like Carol. Michael sat at his kitchen table as the agents spread files before him. They invested hundreds of thousands just to corner you. And they're not finished, one agent warned. Emily sat across from him, eyes wide. They'll destroy everything just to dig it up. Michael leaned back, exhausted but steady. Then let's expose them all. If Grace was just the pawn, it's time we drag the kings into the light. The neighborhood gathered again, this time not divided, but united. Parents held their kids close, voices firm. No more secrecy, no more threats. Michael stood at the front, the lake shimmering behind him. They think fear will break us, but fear ends when truth speaks louder. Applause thundered, but he stayed somber. The fight wasn't over. He knew it. That night, a letter slipped under his door confirmed it. "You don't belong here. Sell or lose more than your dog." Michael folded the note, jaw tight. Buddy's memory burned in his chest, but now the stakes were higher. His land, his neighbors, his life. He looked out at the dark waters of the lake, knowing the war had just begun, and this time, he wasn't fighting alone.